Okay, let's unpack this. If you're catching up on political thought, maybe prepping for something where Marx comes up, you almost always hit this one certainty. Karl Marx was an atheist. Simple as that. And therefore, any movement based on his ideas, well, must be atheistic too. That's the standard view, right? Even in recent biographies.
It is, yeah. It's the sort of quick reference answer you get. But, if you really delve into the scholarship, people like David McClellan, Luciano Pernetto, that popular picture, it needs some serious refining.
Refining, okay.
So our mission, really, in this deep dive is to show that Marx's relationship with religion, and specifically atheism, well, it was way more subtle, it was dialectical, and ultimately, you could probably call it post-atheist.
Post-atheist. Okay, that already sounds much more interesting than just confirming the old stereotype. So the short answer then is, he was no longer an atheist, maybe, and also neither an atheist nor a theist.
Exactly. And understanding why both of those are true, that's where the nuance is. That's his journey beyond his youth. And to really get a grip on this, we need a specific idea. Pernetto uses this Italian term, non più ateo.
Non più ateo.
Yeah, and the brilliant thing is, it means two things at once. Neither an atheist and no longer an atheist. Getting why both fit is key.
Okay, so let's tackle the no longer part first.
Okay.
The history. McClellan's work helps here, right? He points out there was a time, a brief one, when Marx was pretty militantly atheist.
That's right. Around 1841, yeah. He was young, radical, working with Bruno Bauer, another young Hegelian. They were so anti-religion, they actually planned this thing called the Atheistic Archives. For them, getting rid of religion was the main fight, the defining struggle for freedom.
Wow, an Atheistic Archives. That's pretty committed.
Oh, yeah. But, and this is crucial, that phase just fizzled out really fast. By 1842, certainly by 44 when he's writing The Holy Family, he's already kind of moved past Bauer intellectuals.
You're past him how?
Well, McClellan points out the key finding. Marx quickly decided that the whole fight against religion, it was secondary, subordinate,
Subordinate to what?
to the economic struggle. That was the real battleground. Fighting religion was sort of a distraction.
Okay, hang on, let's pause there. Because that shift feels really important. It's often easier politically to rally people against something, right? A common enemy, a clear no. Why would Marx deliberately step away from that easy target, that fight against God?
That's a great question. Because for Marx, the ideological fight religion was just a symptom, a reflection of deeper issues. He felt putting all your political energy into attacking religion was like fighting shadows, not the real thing causing the problem.
The substance being the economy.
Exactly. McClellan found this quote from Marx back in 1842 that just nails it. He said, "Atheism was only a stage on the path to communism, and an abstract one at that.
An abstract stage.
Only communism proposed a doctrine of action that affected what was real. So the priority had to be changing the material world, the economy."
Okay, the consequence of that shift is, well, it's massive, isn't it? It explains a lot about how his ideas get misused. If the main goal is economic liberation, then theoretically a movement, even a religious one, if it genuinely helps that economic goal,
then it's compatible with the spirit of Marx's thought. Absolutely. The focus is on material emancipation.
Right. And conversely, think about the 20th century.
Yeah.
State-imposed atheism in some Marxist regimes.
Fundamentally goes against this idea. By making atheism mandatory, by focusing on just negating religion, you risk turning atheism itself into a new kind of dogma, a new false consciousness as rigid as the old religion.
Just swapping one ideology for another without fixing the underlying problem.
Precisely. The material conditions come first, always, not the fight over belief itself.
Okay, so that historical shift sets us up nicely for Pernetto's thesis. He talks about the legend of Marx's atheism.
Yes, he really works to dismantle it, and the sources back him up. Marx actually explicitly denied being an atheist in the 1844 manuscripts.
Explicitly denied it.
Wow.
So he wasn't just dropping the militancy, he was dropping the whole label.
He saw the concept itself as, well, intellectually unnecessary once you moved further. And that brings us to that second, maybe deeper meaning of non più ateo. Neither an atheist nor a theist.
Okay.
Marx viewed atheism as just a historical step, something you had to pass through dialectically, but not the final destination.
Right, not the end goal. It had to be transcended.
Exactly, transcended. And there's a key quote in those 1844 manuscripts that really captures this. Can I read a bit?
Please do.
Marx writes, "Atheism, which is the denial of this unreality of nature and of man, no longer has any meaning."
No longer has meaning. Why?
"For atheism is a negation of God." He goes on to say that once you positively assert the reality and importance of humanity and nature, which communism aims to do, then the whole negative idea of atheism just becomes redundant. logically unnecessary.
Oh, so it's not about being against God anymore. It's about being for humanity and nature, fully realized.
That's the dialectical move, precisely. You don't just oppose the thesis, religion, you negate the negation, atheism, to get to a higher positive synthesis, humanism, communism.
Like Hegel, but grounded in material reality.
You got it. And he saw this happening in stages, just like he later outlined stages of communism. He saw stages of atheism's development.
And what are these stages?
Well, first there's what he called crude atheism. Think Enlightenment materialists, Dolbach, Helvetius.
The French guys.
Right. Marx saw them as historically important, sure. He called their view the historically justified philosophical illusion about the bourgeoisie, necessary to break feudalism, but ultimately tied to the logic of early capitalism.
Okay, stage one. What's next?
Stage two is political atheism. This was closer to home for Marx groups like the Freien, those radical young Hegelians he knew briefly. Their big thing was tying emancipation directly and only to getting rid of religion. Abolish religion, achieve freedom.
That sounds like a pretty standard radical position, even today sometimes. What's the problem with it for Marx?
The problem is it's still defined purely by negation. It's defined by what it's against God, religion.
So it's still dependent on religion for its identity.
Exactly. It's still, in a way, letting religion set the terms of the debate. It's an alienated view of humanity because its freedom is defined only by not being religious.
But if political atheism is actively fighting oppression, isn't that good enough for a political movement? Why insist on moving past that? Positive goals are harder to rally around than common enemies.
That's the pragmatic challenge, for sure. But for Marx, philosophically, it wasn't sufficient. If your whole identity revolves around denying religion, you're still implicitly giving religion the central philosophical role. The ultimate goal has to be to reach a state where religion just isn't the main question anymore. It becomes irrelevant.
Okay, so that leads to the third stage.
Yes, the transcendence, stage 3. Positive atheism, or maybe better, post-atheism.
This is the destination.
This is the destination. It's much closer to a robust humanism or naturalism. The focus shifts completely. It's not about opposing religion anymore. It's about the positive task, achieving humanity's reconciliation with nature, overcoming economic alienation. It's a philosophy of assertion, of building
Building a positive human reality.
making it the equivalent of what he called positive communism. The idea is if you fix the material world, if you achieve real human flourishing,
Then the need for the opiate, the religious consolation.
it just naturally fades away. You don't need a militant fight against it because the conditions that created the need for it are gone.
Okay, that's a powerful framework. Now, you mentioned Dolbach earlier, part of that crude atheism. Marx kind of dismissed him as just speaking for the bourgeoisie.
He did, yeah. He
Yeah.
could be quite dismissive of the earlier materialists sometimes. But this is where the sources we're looking at suggest maybe Marx's judgment was a bit hasty.
Hasty how?
If you actually dig into de Holbach's political stuff, like his Politique naturelle, you find some surprisingly radical ideas. Ideas that go way beyond just defending bourgeois interests.
Okay, like what? When we think Enlightenment materialism, we often think Locke, individual rights, maybe early utility ideas like Bentham.
Right, often quite individualistic. But Tolbach's idea of utility was different. It was pretty revolutionary for the time. He wasn't just talking about, maximizing individual pleasure or abstract rights. For him, utility meant society setting up rules, conventions, that materially guaranteed the basic needs of all citizens.
All citizens, so much more collective and focused on material well-being from the start.
Very much so. And here's the critical link. His atheism directly fuels his attack on property rights.
How does that work?
Well, think about the typical justification for property then, maybe like Locke's. God gave the earth to mankind, justifying private appropriation.
Okay.
If you take God out of the equation, like Tolbach does, then property stops being the sacred relationship between humans and God, or humans and nature ordained by God.
It just becomes a relationship between people, a social construct.
Exactly. It becomes a political arrangement, something humans created and humans can change, open to redistribution.
And in 18th century France, that meant
land. Land was the key means of production. So Dolbach ends up arguing for a massive redistribution of land so that the people working the land actually own it.
Wow. That sounds pretty proto-socialist, actually. a direct line to challenging the means of production.
It really does. So even though Marx critiqued the philosophical basis of Dolbach's atheism, His ideas stemming from that atheism were actually a really important practical step towards historical materialism, towards minimizing exploitation, justifying inequality only if it materially benefited everyone.
So even those earlier crude atheisms had a kind of positive, emancipatory spark within them.
They did, which kind of brings us nicely to the present day, doesn't it? How does Marx's more subtle stance resonate now? We often see the sort of new atheists today, Dawkins, Harris, Dennett.
Right. Very prominent.
And they often operate mostly within that framework of, well, political atheism, you could say. Defending liberal values, science, rationality, often against perceived religious threats.
Which is a necessary critique sometimes, of course, but philosophically.
It kind of stays at that level of negation, doesn't it? It doesn't always push towards that positive material emancipation that Marx was aiming for.
Which is why someone like William Connolly is interesting here. His idea of non-theism.
Yes, exactly. Connolly's work really resonates with Marx's post-atheism, I think. Connolly suggests we view deeply held commitments, whether they're political, philosophical, or even religious, as different kinds of existential faith, different ways of making sense of and committing to the world.
Existential faiths.
Okay.
How does that reframe things?
It shifts the focus. You're not arguing about whether God exists or not. You're navigating the political space between different fundamental commitments about existence, about what matters.
And that allows for, what does he call it? Agonistic respect.
Agonistic respect, yeah. It means you can have deep disagreements, real struggle. That's the agonistic part, but you do it with a certain respect. You see the other person, with their different existential faith, not as an enemy to be destroyed, but as a legitimate adversary in the argument, especially if you can find some shared ground.
Like a shared commitment to human emancipation, perhaps.
Yeah.
Even if you arrive at it from totally different starting
Exactly,
points, religious faith, atheism, whatever.
And this opens the door for really potent political alliances, cross-faith collaborations. Connolly calls it building a resonance machine.
A resonance machine, like amplifying shared goals.
Exactly. He points to the evangelical capitalist resonance machine as a powerful, if politically opposing, example.
Okay, I can see that. Two very different worldviews. Religious conservatism and free market fundamentalism finding common ground and amplifying each other's political power enormously.
Right. So Connolly's challenge is, can those on the side of emancipation build their own resonance machine? Can you bring together, say, certain progressive Christian groups, Marxists, atheists, focused on social justice, socialists, environmentalists, find those points of resonance around shared material concerns?
Building unexpected alliances based on common practical goals rather than identical beliefs.
Yeah. And you see this kind of thinking, this moving beyond simple atheism or humanism in some contemporary thought too, the new materialisms.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, think of someone like Jane Bennett. She pushes us to consider the agency of non-human things, commodities, technologies, ecological systems within political life, expanding what materialism even means.
Right, looking beyond just the human subject.
Or Bernard Stiegler, who focused heavily on the role of techniques, technology, external memory in shaping human existence and political economy.
So they're building on Marx's materialist foundations.
But pushing them further, moving past a narrow humanism or a simple atheism, maybe towards a post-humanism, but without abandoning that core goal of liberation from alienation and exploitation, it's still about emancipation in the material world.
They're showing the tradition is still alive, still developing, still trying to assert a positive vision.
Definitely. It's a dynamic, ongoing project.
So, wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, listening to this? It means Marx's own journey wasn't just about saying no to God. It was a much more complex move. From negation, that early militant atheism, towards positive assertion, humanism, communism, a focus on building a better material world.
The goal wasn't really to defeat God philosophically. It was to make the question of God irrelevant by fixing the material problems that, for Marx, led people to need religion in the first place.
And knowing this helps us look beyond those really rigid ideological boxes people get put into. It suggests that maybe real collaboration for social justice, for material improvement, can happen across very different belief systems, across different existential faiths.
If the focus stays on shared material goals, yes, it opens up possibilities.
Okay, so final thought, something for you to chew on. Building on that resonance machine idea, Marx himself understood the need for alliances. He supported working with, political odd bedfellows like liberals back in 1848 if it served the immediate goal of material progress. So the question for you is, looking at the powerful economic and ideological alliances that exist today, which seemingly incompatible existential faiths, religious, political, philosophical, could potentially find enough resonance to collaborate and build the next powerful machine for progressive change. What might that look like?